Okay, so overview of the goals of assessment. This is what you need to be able to determine. Issue, the severity, the nature, the irritability, and stage. Now, these are the terms that they use. I've asked people what the difference is between irritability and severity. I'm guessing, and nobody really knows, to be honest. Irritability, I think, is what makes it worse, what makes it better. Like the things during the day that you do that makes it sore. Severity, obviously how bad it is, mild, severe. Nature, is it sprain, strain, dislocation, fracture, that type of thing. And then stage of healing, is it acute? Is it late in the remodeling phase, and so on. At the end of each stage, means now will tell you need to indicate or state your indices of suspicion so we can see what you're thinking throughout the entire stage. And then provide information from which appropriate treatment decisions, referrals can be made. Okay, so again, that's the purpose of the assessment. So for example, if there's any range of motion deficits, how do you address that with your treatment and rehab? Okay. It's the assessment. That's where you get all that information from. You're not going to have a good rehab plan. You're going to be wasting your time if you don't address the specific things you find during your assessment. So again, just to reiterate what we talked about with principles of assessment, make sure you introduce yourself, consent, be aware of your verbal and nonverbal communication, name, age, gender, sport, the level at which they're playing, more specifically the position they play. That's what makes you guys the specialists, because you are familiar with sport positions. And if you're not, you need to research that stuff. How many of you played rugby before? Okay, so for those of you that haven't, the different positions have different roles. Baseball, I think, is obvious. Hockey, I think, is obvious to a certain extent. Basketball, I think, is pretty obvious. Football, a little complicated for some people as well. Okay, between offensive line, defensive line, your DBs, your running backs, your defensive backs, or DBs, your special teams as well. Okay. And not just the common major sports, but there's other sports as well. Curling, badminton that people don't talk about too often. Golf is a big one nowadays, and there's big money in golf. If you want to eventually do biomechanical assessments with an AT background, there's huge money in golf. But my point is with the sport, if you plan on working with the sport, so for example, Taekwondo, because we have a couple of Taekwondo terms that we cover, you need to know the sport. Okay, so what the main movements are, but you may also need to know the rules for return to play decisions. Okay, but that's a conversation again you have with the patient. And outside of sport, outside of school, what they do occupationally. Okay, are they a server? Are they a desk worker? They may not even have a job, but you need to find out. Chief complaint may not always be pain. Just realize that. In the shoulder, reproduction of symptoms is what we stress. Not pain per se, but symptoms. Because a lot of times they'll be complaining of instability. Okay? And if you ask them if it hurts with this test, they'll say no. But they may be unstable. Onset of the injury, so the date, mechanism, and then previous history. Location of pain, I've been taught to use one finger to point to where it hurts the most. If it's chronic, it won't be a specific spot. They may say, oh, in this area. Okay, if you can get them to point with one finger, it makes it a lot easier for you. Okay, so that's important. Now, this is the way I arrange my history taking. I don't know about you guys. This is the way I do it. As soon as I figure out what the date is, I automatically go to, depending if it's acute, I go sound sensations, and then I go into pain. Okay? So if it's an acute injury, these are the things to focus on if it's acute. Sound sensations, symptoms, position of the limb at the time of injury. So can you show me with the opposite side what position your limb was in when it happened? That'll paint a clear picture in your mind as well. And last but not least, able to continue the day you heard it. Okay? Were you able to continue? If they were not able to continue, it says something about the severity. Okay? For chronic injuries, the main thing to focus on with chronic injuries are changes. I felt something about 3 months ago. It's different now. I feel like it's getting worse. It's moving around. It's spreading. It was sharp, but now it's dull. The tingling is not just in my shoulder neck, but now it's into my fingers. Those are changes. What is causing those changes? There's things that you can ask. You can ask about training changes. So have you changed what you've been doing in the gym? Equipment. For racket sports, have you changed your grip size of the racket? Have you changed the string or the tightness of the strings, which at high levels, you're really picky about that. Golf clubs as well. Did you get a new set of golf clubs? They might be a little bit different. So you need to ask questions about that. Training surfaces, that's more for lower body. Okay, so were you running on concrete or grass or turf, and did that change in around the time when you started experiencing these changes in your pain or in your symptoms? And last but not least, mechanics. And that's, in some situations like baseball, if you get a new coach, they might tell you to adjust your mechanics a little bit for certain pitches. Could that lead to problems in the wrist and elbow and shoulder? Absolutely. Okay? So those are certain things you need to pay attention to as chronic changes. So you need, in order to be able to figure this out, you need to know the sport and the details of the sport and the position they play. Changes in symptoms, not just pain, but clicking, weakness, instability, have those changed as well. Okay? And last but not least, are there changes in sleeping position and posture that may have affected the change in these symptoms over the last few months or so? So generally, those are the main differences. And you can start with this as soon as you find out when the date was. So when did you hurt it? Okay, was it acute? Was it just recent? Then start with those questions. If it's chronic changes over time, then you might want to start with the chronic questions. In all situations, you're asking about pain, unless it's instability. But you can also put a rating on instability and other symptoms. Okay, now PQRST, I think everybody knows what PQRST stands for, because we talked about that before, right? Provokes, quality, R is radiating or referred, S is severity, T is time. It doesn't necessarily have to be specifically with pain, though. You can still get ratings with numbing and tingling, let's say. So the intense. So how many of you hit your funny bone before? How many of you just nicked it and you got a little bit, and then banged it and you were like, ah, and you actually made a noise like that? Is it like so much? Okay, obviously there's a difference in how much that hits you, right? So you can put a number on that, just like a pain rating. So from 0 to 10, 10 being really, really annoying and 0 being none at all. Can you put a number on that numbing and tingling for me when you first hit it? What's that number now, just sitting here? Okay, it doesn't have to be just pain, that rating scale. But you can do the same thing with all the other symptoms. Okay? I don't think we need to go over this again. Skip this, unless you guys have questions. If questions do come up, then let me know. Medical conditions, I think we talked about that before. That could have some implications if you have like cirrhosis of the liver that could radiate pain into what shoulder? If it's the liver? 50-50. Right. Good. Okay. So right side of the quadrant, you hit the right shoulder. So if you've got a medical condition with liver, it could radiate pain into the right shoulder. Medications, the main thing with medications, make sure they didn't take any when they saw you or before they saw you. And last but not least, were they ever referred when they got hurt? Did they see somebody else? Because you can take some information from other practitioners they have seen or other tests that they have gotten done to help you with your assessment. Okay, so again, that's something that's important to ask. General health. Previous hospitalization, surgery, injury above and below. Again, pertinent information that could give you some clues with what's wrong with this person. Has gone away? Is it recurring? And if there's any issues with the uninvolved side, because that will affect your bilateral comparison. You do want to ask about physical activities, smoking, diet, and stressors. Again, I think we addressed some of this during principles of assessment. Okay, the last slide I want to just, again, general assessment. Again, this is just repeating what we mainly talked about with principles of assessment. Athletes' goals, time frames, specific dates, and so on. And then any physical goals they might have. Okay, they may not be involved in an activity, but they want to be able, or in a sport per se, but they might be looking at to compete, I don't know, to run a marathon 3 months from now. Okay. So again, that's really important because it kind of gives you an idea of how quickly you need to move with the rehab. Some things are out of our control, but if you know what their deadline is, you can at least give them a reality check by saying, based on what I've seen, it might be worth not aiming for that competition, aim for the next one. You guys are going to have to do that with some of your athletes, right? Oh, I want to play next weekend. But based on what you find, it's probably better if you don't play next weekend. Let's aim for the next week after that. And that happens a lot. And they will not like you for that. But you have to paint the big picture for them. And the big picture is, at the CIS level, try to make playoffs. Try to make nationals. One exhibition game at the beginning of the semester isn't going to affect much of the season. Okay? But that information you get from them, I guess that's part of your history taking as well. Again, PQRST and sample. Okay, now, we're never going to talk about general principles of assessment now. Okay, that was it. Every time we talk about assessment for all the other 4 body areas, including ankle today, we'll get into just the specific details with that body area that you need to include into the general history taking. Okay? So for example, for the ankle, lower leg, feet, and toes, equipment considerations, shoes, socks, orthotics, and braces. You need to ask them about that. Okay? Under observations, we'll take a look at our own shoes today to see if there's any clues we can get. Training terrain, again, this is strictly lower body. A lot of this stuff you'll probably see again with the knee, okay, maybe even the hip. Consider the terrain, the training, warm up and cool down if athlete actually does that type of stuff. Symptoms during walking, jogging, running, stairs, and jumping. So most times I have seen people just ask about PQRST and other symptoms sitting on the table. But that's not what their main complaint is. Usually their main complaint is, I can't run because it hurts. Okay, well tell me what else you can't do because of the pain. How are stairs? How is skating? How is jumping into the long jump pit? How is landing? How is doing a layup? Okay? So the symptoms you need to ask about, but not just sitting on the table. How were the symptoms when it happened? How were the symptoms that night, the next day? Did you try to practice? Well, how are your symptoms during practice? And when I mean symptoms, PQ or RST. Again, you need to draw a clear picture with when this injury hurts the most for this person. And then distal symptoms. So if it's the ankle, we're looking at the knee and the lumbar spine. That's the quadrant. And that's mainly for chronic conditions. So see if there's any symptoms away from that injury site as well. You guys have any questions so far? Okay. So it looks like most of you are in groups of 4. Cody, you can move up and work with these guys. And then you 5 in the back, and then you 5 in the front. And then you 4 in the back. Is that cool? Okay, so what I'll do is I have these checkpoints. Again, a checkpoint is a time for you guys to sit and chat and kind of get away from listening to me for 10 minutes. But I put these checkpoints up so you can kind of discuss what I just talked about previous to it. Okay? So for the next, we'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes. Just go down this list. And we'll talk about what these things mean. When people say this, what do you think it is referring to? These are clues during your statement. Some of them are easy, some of them might be a little more challenging. But let's just start off that. So I'll give you about 3 minutes.
Just want to write it down.
What does the following indicate? Think about the obvious, but then think about the not so obvious as well. Pop, shout it out. What do we got?
Tendon or ligament.
Tendon or ligament. What?
Tear.
Tear, rupture, not a sprain, 3rd-degree sprain, but on a stretch. If you're a pop, it's tendon ligament. What else?
Fluid.
Dislocation, good. Such as? Shoulder is a good one. Any other dislocations? Knee, hip,
Ankle, wrist, elbow,
all of them.
Had all of these.
neck.
What really is that?
Check it. Anything else? Pop.
What sound does it make when your eardrum breaks?
Sorry?
Could it be your eardrum popping? I have no idea what sound that would make, but
Anybody ever pop their eardrum? Pop your eardrum?
It doesn't sound like a lot.
Does it?
Yeah, my mom likes it. She did that. She said it was just like a lot of pain.
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know.
I just assumed it would make a noise, but I guess not.
Any other pops?
Huh?
How about this?
What about
How will you do this? What is that?
Is that releasing gas?
Is it? I just dislocate it with my finger. Pop, pop. What is that? Or when you do your back thing. Or if people do that.
Oh, I hate that one.
It still sounds like a pop. What is that?
It's like
just
Yeah, that's what they say. It's to release the gas from the joint space, potentially. Could be a tendon flipping over a bony landmark. I really don't know, to be honest. But those are the things that I've heard.
Isn't all the lots of the research on that like just totally inconclusive? Like there's like so many different theories and stuff and no one really knows what it is. They just speculate.
It's all speculation. From what I've seen, it's all speculation. But I give patients, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, but I say the same thing, it's inconclusive. Any other pops? Okay. Crack. Fracture. Rapidus, possibly.
They said that I know a guy on my volleyball team over here, he rolled his ankle really bad. He said it felt like things were just like cracking.
Okay. He got an X-ray and it wasn't.
But Dias just thinks of tearing. And I think it was a second degree, so it was like tearing, whatever. But
Yeah.
instead, describe it as crack.
So sometimes people substitute one for the other. It's possible. Okay, but just have an open mind to that. I stepped in a hole. Now these guys had a question with, did it feel like it stepped in a hole, or did they actually step in a hole? So what does it feel like when someone steps in a hole, I guess, is my question. So it hurts.
Instability.
Sorry?
There's instability.
Possibly instability. It feels like I stepped in a hole. Yeah, that could be a way someone would say it feels unstable, because when you step in a hole, you kind of wobble a little bit, right? So that might be an interpretation. Good.
Atrophy
Atrophy.
or anything neural.
Okay.
just muscle weakness in general.
Good. They might be suggesting it was the actual mechanism if they say that. Sorry.
Spring.
Yeah. Good. But that on top of, okay, show me with your other leg, that'll give you more information. Okay. It's just been getting worse and worse.
Concussion.
Concussion, good. Sorry? Chronic injuries, anything chronic?
Overtraining.
Overtraining. Stress fractures, good. Sorry? Cancer? It's true though.
Yeah.
So whatever you thought before, listen to the other examples. Because it could be. So don't just think they see this, boom, chronic. Now you have to start looking at these other things just in case, right? Cancer's one. Good. Could just be a training thing. They just could be lifting more. That's normal. Suck it up. What are you coming to see me for? It could be that. Or it could be you need to go see somebody right away. Based on that one statement that they said. Okay, but again, you need to be a detective and dig a little bit deeper. It hurts when it even hurts when I sleep. Right in.
Fractures.
Fractures, good.
Could be like a bone bruise.
Bone bruise, good. Anything bone? Could be cancerous.
Concussion.
Could be concussion as well. Absolutely.
What about like an internal injury?
Like a visceral?
Something like that.
Possibly, yeah.
Infection.
Infection, good. Good. So I'm hoping that some of you may not have heard some of these other examples before, especially some of these other ones we talked about already. But I'm hoping that now you consider them at least. It tingles. The obvious? No. Could it be anything else? Could it be anything else? they just be saying this because what we know it as nerve could be something else? You know what I mean? Because when someone says snap, right? They say snap, we say crack. It's the same thing. Okay? They say tingles, we think nerve, but maybe they think tingling. Maybe they mean that's, I don't know, a circulatory issue. You guys ever play that game where you like squeeze all the blood out of your hand?
Yeah.
Try that right now. Tell me if it tingles when you let all the blood back in. Does it tingle?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's circulatory, possibly. Okay. It feels cold sometimes.